Okay. I think ready to roll. Let's do this. Everybody, welcome in. Nice to see you all. The quick starting soon today. quick oh, quick starting soon for everybody on YouTube. Alright, let's do it. Here we go. I think I got this. Hey everybody, welcome to the Sandwich Corner. This is our companion program to the Sandwich Show on Twitch. We do this show on YouTube and also on all your podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple Music and Amazon Music, all the musics, and wherever you get podcasts out there. My name is Dave Medina. You know me as Davey's Eating a Sandwich on many different platforms, particularly those of Twitch, Instagram, and TikTok. It is nice to have you here. This is part 2 of our college football preview tonight. And in this edition of our college football preview, we're going to cover the group of 5 teams, the mid-majors, make some predictions and do some hot seat predictions for the coaches. And of course, we had our friend here last week. We're going to pick it up again this week. Sorry we weren't here yesterday, but it's all good. We get to roll it out. No problem at all. Let's go bring in our guest of the evening. We have our friend back. Let's say hello once again to our good pal, John in Connecticut. John, good to have you back. How's it going tonight?
What's up, Dave? Yeah, doing well. Sorry that we had to postpone from last night, but yeah, it's all good. We're here to talk some group of 5. So very excited about
Yeah, me too. And it is really nice to have you back. Thanks for taking the time. It's always nice to do the thing. Yeah, and definitely we're gonna have a lot to cover tonight. I also have Independence, which we tend to do. And I think in retrospect, I probably should have done that last week because there's like basically, can we cover Notre Dame and the Pac-2? Could totally have done that last week. It's all right. So it'll still work out fine. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of where the real fun is in college football because I know everybody pays attention to Power Four and the championships and the playoffs, and it's understandably so. But I think the true charm of college football can sometimes be here, where everything means everything. All the games mean everything, things like that, and the conference championships matter. The same thing in basketball, so it's kind of a good spot, John.
Oh yeah, this is where like you can make your money if you know, if you have enough knowledge of the various conferences and teams and some of the lower schools, they might not be as priced as accurately as some of the higher majors. So there's definitely some more money to be made if you can get an edge on some of these group of 5 teams. And let's be honest, who doesn't like watching, action during Tuesdays and Wednesdays in November? And now we've gotten Conference USA is doing the same thing in October on the Tuesday and Wednesday games. So it just, it's nothing better than watching some mid-major college football during the week. Like you probably wouldn't get your eyes on a lot of these games like on a Saturday with 100 games on, but um, during the week, this is where it's at for sure.
Yeah, definitely on that. And as you said, like good value and definitely a lot to look forward to, and it gives you more reasons to watch throughout the week. So good times all around. Saying hello to Jordy. Welcome in. Jordy's in our YouTube chat tonight. It says hello to me and to John and to you, John. So we're doing well. Hope you can settle in. Like we're gonna tell you a little bit about some of these teams in the mid majors. So before we do that though, let's get into the we're gonna talk about the hot seat, which is always sizzling every year, but this year is particularly tasty because I think we've got some pretty big coaches who've been around a while, and John alluded to one last week on the program, and there's a lot to unpack. But John, I'm gonna give you the floor first. Who are some of the coaches you have on your hot seat radar?
Well, I think the first one has to be Billy Napier at Florida, and the schedule that they're playing. It's not going to be a fun time for them, especially later in the year. We went through it, Dave, when they had what say their last 5 games are all against top 15 opponents. I mean, that's just absolutely insane. You know, it, I'm doing a pool where you have to pick a winner from the SEC every week. It's like a survivor pool. I have no idea when I'm going to use Florida. Like you have to use every team. Like their schedule is just so tough. I imagine a lot of people might get knocked out on them, but he's definitely like number one on the hot seat in terms of like Power Five teams. I would say Dave Aranda at Baylor. I mean, he's really started off hot, but it's been a struggle for him the last couple of years, and they really don't have a great projection from this year. I think we briefly talked about them, excuse me, on the last show. I don't know about if you want to go as far as saying like Ryan Day at Ohio State. I don't know if they lose to Michigan again, like he might be in trouble. But I guess we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. Mario Cristobal at Miami, again, brought in just a ton of talent in the portal, as we talked about. So if they kind of fall on their face again this year, he's going to be in trouble. At Narduzzi at Pitt, I think could be, they just ended up changing coordinators. So like Bobby Petrino is back at Arkansas. I think if they get off to a bad start, he's going to be gone, and Petrino will take over. And then let's see here. The guy at Vanderbilt, Clark Lee. I mean, I know it's only Vanderbilt, but he could be in for a rough season if they only win like 2 games again. I mean, I don't know what they expect, at Vanderbilt, but it's a tough situation for him. Dave, I don't know, would you say Lincoln Riley is on the hot seat heading into this year?
Yeah, it's fair. I think so. I mean, it's fair to say it. I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, but I mean, it's definitely fair to say it because, there are lots of expectations. They thought they thought the USC was going to make consistent New Year's Six at that point in time appearances, and they haven't really done that. So there's definitely levels of disappointment. Now it's an interesting year because we talked about last week. Like now the expectations are a lot lower. They're like, well, they're now going to be in the Big Ten, so like maybe we're not going to expect them to win the conference like we usually do, like we had been before. But it's definitely fair. I think they paid a lot of money for him, and they're not getting a lot of money worth of production in terms of like getting to bowls or getting to big bowls, getting the playoff. And so it's almost like the same team in some regards, like in terms of how they finished each year. So not good.
I mean, they say his defense is going to be better this year, but I guess to be determined on that.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. They've been trying to fix it. Like I give them credit for at least making an attempt at it. They're firing their defensive coordinator, and so on and so forth. But I don't know. It might be too much at this point. He's just never been good at defense. Like in Oklahoma, it was the same thing. So I think the natives will be getting restless over here about it. So we'll find out. They had a Heisman Trophy winner coach, quarterback their team, and somehow they still didn't make it in the playoffs. So I don't know what to say to that. It's interesting.
Defense was so bad.
It really was.
Called it going into last year too.
Yeah, that's true. It's been atrocious. Like you're just not going to get far. And whether it was Oklahoma in the Big 12 or here or at the time at the Pac-12, and even more so now with the Big 10, you're not going to get to a playoff with that defense, with that kind of defense. So, yeah, I think you definitely put his name on the hot seat. Now you pretty much labeled all of them. I mean, Pittman was a big one. I love the optic of Petrino taking over his old coaching gig at Arkansas. That's just hilarious to me. Like it's all set up too, like you said. Like it's like perfect.
Oh yeah, it really is. They ran him out of town, and now like they're chanting, Bobby, Bobby. It's crazy.
It is. It's just funny how that goes full circle for him. Like it's funny. So yeah, nothing for me to add. I mean, that's great. Probably would have said Harbaugh if he was still here. I'm just kidding. They won a championship. There's no way they could put him on the hot seat now. But he left, and now there's recruiting violation issues. So I mean, sounds like our friend Jim Harbaugh pulled a Pete Carroll over at Michigan. Gosh, who knows? But
yeah, got over just when the sanctions were about to come down and everything else.
That's usually how it goes.
Smart move on his point. Really.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, it was a very smart move. I mean, so we'll see how things go. I mean, and Harbaugh's good actually. I feel pretty good about Harbaugh and on the Chargers too. I feel like that'll go well, but we'll see. Nobody really knows, but yeah, well said, John. So yeah, I mean that's about it. I mean, we did talk a little bit about the Heisman last year. One thing I'll say about it is that you do have a pretty good quarterback duel going between between Quentin Ewers and the relatively new guy at Georgia, the one that was playing last year. Um, I keep forgetting. It's always some like country club name. I just forgot.
Yeah, Carson Beck.
Carson Beck. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so he's a guy now, and I mean, honestly, everything that they've been saying about him has been positive. So I think that's going to be a good challenge. We'll see if either of them win it or if someone else will. Um, it's an interesting spot. I mean, I don't really have anything to necessarily add to that, but John, I can give you the floor as far as anything you'd like to add for the Heisman or anything else with the season.
I would say maybe Dylan Gabriel from Oregon. They're primed to have a pretty big year, and I've been playing with them a little bit lately on NCAA 25, and their offense is pretty sick. So, um, definitely think he could be in contention for some Heisman awards. So I would head into like the kind of the short list with Beck and Ewers and um, I guess whoever plays Ohio quarterback at Ohio State. Even though like we talked about, I mean maybe Will Howard isn't the best quarterback, but he's going to put up some good stats on the Buckeyes with all the weapons they have. So I guess that's kind of who I'd add onto the Heisman mix. I guess if you want to go further, like Ollie Gordon, if he really does well again with Oklahoma State, if he just has another six season like that, he could definitely be up there. Um, I think those are the kind of the other few names that I'd add to the Heisman list at the moment.
No, it's pretty solid. I mean, I think it's a good field. That I think I felt like because sometimes it's just a one person. It's pretty obvious. It's just one guy. But here, I think you've got like two, maybe even three people that you can go with. And so you mentioned like Gabriel's actually a good, interesting call because I think he's gonna have a very very good environment. I believe that's Oregon's new coach. I mean quarterback, right? So just double
Yep.
checking. Yeah, nice. That's a nice spot. Yeah. That's pretty good. So here's a question from Jordy. Jordy asks, which new coaches will pan out and how quickly? That's a good question, John. How would you assess that?
Ooh, that is a good question. I'd have to see the list of the new coaches. So maybe let me pull that up first while we
Okay,
talk about something else, and I'll get back to
sure,
that.
sure. So yeah, John will get back. I'll just give a shout out for a couple of quick hitters. I mean, I think the biggest one we're going to talk about is going to be DeBoer at Alabama. I don't think he's going to be the one that pans out quickly. That's going to take a few years, but I do think it could pan out. I think it's literally the best coaching move hire you can make in college football. So it was a really good pick by Alabama. So, but I just have to hope that the organization and the fans are patient enough to let it happen. Like you're going to need like 3 years for that to really pan out. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll get back to that once John has that list up. And in the meanwhile, we'll go ahead and do our storylines and or we'll do our conference previews, and it should be pretty interesting stuff. Well, I think one of the new coach I was looking at, I think was the one. I'm trying to figure out where, but
Okay, I have the list up now,
oh, you got
Dave.
it. Okay, cool. I'll give you the
Yeah.
floor.
So obviously, I would agree DeBoer is probably the number one choice. I mean, the guy has won everywhere he's gone, um, from Division two to when he was at Fresno, and then to Washington, and now at Alabama. I mean, the only thing I guess I would be concerned about with him is he doesn't really have any Southeastern ties, and that's kind of obviously that's Alabama's hotbed of recruiting is there. I mean, although they can recruit nationally for sure, but just in terms of like pure coaching, he's for sure the number one hire of the cycle by far. Um, some of the other ones that I did like, and we kind of mentioned a few of these last week when we went through the Power Five preview. Uh, the two hires at Indiana, Kirk Signetti from James Madison. I think that was a great hire. Again, another guy who's just won everywhere he's gone, and just kind of bringing. He pretty much brought his entire team from like James Madison to Indiana. So we'll see if that works out, in due time, but or for this year rather. But I think long term, I think that was a great get um, by Indiana. And then the other Big Ten hire that I liked was Jonathan Smith coming over from Oregon State, and he did a really good job building up Oregon State the last few years. From the basement in the Pac-12 to like 9 or 10 wins the last couple of years. So I think that was a really good hire. Again, it might take a few years, for both of them, but I think those are solid hires in the Big Ten. I really liked Mike Elko going to Texas A&M. I mean, he had experience there as the defensive coordinator previously, and we're going to get rid of Jimbo Fisher's like completely antiquated, 1950s offense. So they really could be a player this year with Elko. I mean, he turned around Duke immediately. So imagine what he's going to do with talent at Texas A&M. And then your guy, Dave, Willie Fritz, going over to Houston. I think that was a great move. Getting rid of the used car salesman Holgerson for Willie Fritz. I mean, you could not get a bigger upgrade than that. So I think I just named 5. So yeah, I would say those are like the top 5 hires in my opinion. There were some changes in the group of 5 we can mention as we get through the conferences, but those are like kind of the power level. Those are the main hires that I definitely like.
Yeah, one of them is going to be the new coach at James Madison that you just alluded to. So taking over for Cignetti was going to be Bob Chesney, and we'll get to that when we get to the Sunbelt preview later. So that'll be an interesting spot too. So let's get to these conference previews. We'll do them in alphabetical order, and then we'll tack on. Maybe we should just do the independents first because this is kind of not really here nor there. But 3 of the teams in the independents are basically Power 4 or 5 teams. So let's do it. Independents. We'll actually just pivot this a little bit. We'll go to independents. So Notre Dame is a team. I would not necessarily say Freeman's on the hot seat, but this is definitely a make or break type season for him. It seems like there are big expectations. There was a lot with the transfer portal going down for Notre Dame this offseason. And they're big expectations for Notre Dame. It's 12-team playoffs, so it really almost seems like if they don't make the playoff, the year is a big disappointment for them. So we'll see. And then the Pac-2, Oregon State and Washington State, which could even be honorary Big 12 members at this point, kind of what their schedule is, but we'll see. And then they
have a scheduling thing with the Mountain West.
Oh, was it Mountain West? What did I say? Big 12? Oh yeah. I meant to say Mountain West. So sorry, my bad. So yeah. Right. So like most of their schedule is Mountain West opponents. So it's an interesting situation. And then you've got the usuals, UConn and UMass. So we don't have to spend a lot of time with them, but I'll give it to you for some quickies on the independents.
Yeah, I mean, you really do feel bad for the Pac-2 at this point. I mean, really by no fault of their own, the conference just completely blows up, and here they are. Oregon State loses basically their entire team and their coach, like I just mentioned. So they might be in for a rough season. But again, like we just said, they're playing. Them and Washington State are each playing 7 Mountain West games on their schedule. So it's not like they're playing like a Pac-12 schedule like they were last year. So they could still get bowling, but like, what's that going to do for you? I mean, really nothing at this point. They'd have to win like 10 or 11 games to even be considered for the college football playoff. And I don't think that's happening for either team. I think Washington State's going to be a little more stable than Oregon State just because they kept their coach and there's a little more continuity there. But just a rough situation for those 2 schools. I think it's more so they're keeping their branding of the Pac-12 alive, and basically with the payout that they got from the schools that left, and they're just going to try to rebuild the conference at some point. I think that's kind of the end goal of those 2 universities. So, they'll do this agreement with the Mountain West for as long as they have that, all the money in their bank account, and see if once more conference realignment happens, if another league will end up taking them, or they can pick from other leagues and maybe reform a rebuilt Pac-12 essentially. So that's kind of their outlook at this point. They're kind of like in no man's land essentially. Same thing with UMass and UConn, although UMass is joining the MAC next year. This is their last year as an independent. So we'll get to see some action in UMass next fall, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
UConn, they are not in a conference. They're still, they invest more to basketball, and obviously why wouldn't they when they just won the last 2 national championships and have, 6 overall since this incredible run has started. But I mean, eventually they're going to have a viable football team, and I do think they will end up in a conference at some point, whether it be the ACC or the Big 12. Some more of these dominoes have to fall. I mean, there's been some rumors lately about the Big 12 again, so we'll see about that. I personally would be okay with that. I think basketball would be right there. I mean, the matchups would just be unbelievable in the Big 12 for basketball with UConn, and it would bump up the respectability of their football program. I mean, they would be able to recruit. I think they just had a real down period in recent memory. I mean, people forget when they first joined the Big East for football, they made a BCS bowl game like after 4 years in the conference. So the potential's there. I think UConn will be a little better this year because their schedule's pretty soft and they have a bunch of home games against winnable teams. So I think they can make a bowl game. Um, which would be fine, as a fan. Like, sure, 6-6 and the, higher care bowl, who cares? Like, sign me up for that. UMass is probably a little bit worse than that. So don't expect much from them. I think we talked about last week, they have 3 SEC teams on the schedule, so not sure what's going on with that. And then Notre Dame, their schedule is just an absolute cakewalk. They have like 3 potential games that they really could lose. At Texas A&M the first week of the season, so that'll be tricky, like we just talked about. Like, I really like Elko as a coach, so they could lose that. And then they play Florida State at home, and then they play at USC. But even if they lost, say, one of those games, or even 2, even if they go 1-2 and they win the rest of their games on their schedule, they're going to make it. I mean, 10-2 Notre Dame is going to get a spot in college football playoff. So it's really set up well for them. I wouldn't say that Freeman is on the hot seat yet. If they fall short of expectations this year and go like 8-4 or something, definitely next year he'll be on the hot seat. But I don't see how they're going to falter really against this schedule. It's pretty simple. So if I don't know if we're going to get to like official playoff predictions, Dave. I can't go team by team because, like we were talking about before, like these tiebreakers are just crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to name by like conference, like how many I think from each conference. But I think Notre Dame is going to get a spot. So that's going to take one away from one of these other leagues.
I think so too. As far as looking ahead to the playoff predictions, yeah, we're making the predictions would be impossible. There's just too many, like you said, too many variables. So we won't necessarily do that, but maybe we'll just name like the conference winners and, like you said, any other teams you might think could make the playoff outside of those conferences. Actually, I like your play idea too. Like, you can name how many teams from each conference teams each conference will send. Yeah, that's pretty good. We have one coming from the entire group of 5. And that would be a good question, too. That'd be a good prediction in itself. So we'll get to that towards the end of the program. Jordy with a quick comment. Indiana made a good choice. Hope it works for the best. I agree. It's a really good, solid choice. And in that, I mean, if they had divisions, it would put them in a good spot in the division that they're in. I mean, I think, actually, that's a good question. Is Indiana in the East Division? Or was it before?
Yes, they were. They were in the East. So they're lucky these divisions are gone now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That would have been tough if they were still in the East. So yeah, and so in essence, that it could give them. Now, I think they'll. I feel like their ceiling might be like maybe 9 wins, which is good. That's a pretty good year for Indiana. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, so let's head over to the AAC and take a look at this conference. This is a tough one to predict. There's some solid teams here. Everybody from Memphis to UTSA, South Florida, and then it gets a little interesting after that. I mean, Tulane, like you said, they have new coaching. You have Army joining the conference. They used to be an independent. BYU also joined a conference this year, finally, after years and years of being independent. And then BYU joined a different conference, and then we'll take it from there. John, how do you see the AAC this year?
Yeah, I think that this is going to be pretty competitive. I think there's 4 teams that really have a chance to win the conference. I think it's going to be either UTSA, Tulane, Memphis, or USF, and each team kind of has their own, positives and negatives. So that's why it's going to make it such an interesting race. UTSA no longer has Frank Harris, who seemed like he was quarterback there forever, but they have continuity with their coach. I cannot believe that Jeff Traylor has not been picked up by like a Power 5 school in Texas, although I could see him taking over at Baylor if Aranda is eventually maybe fired after this year. So I could definitely see that happening. But They're still very talented. They got McCown's son. He played a little bit in the bowl game last year. So he's going to be taking over at quarterback for Harris, but they're still pretty talented, and their defense really made strides last year too. So even without Harris, they're going to be right there in contention. Memphis is a team that returns just basically everybody. 10 starters on offense, and Seth Hennigan returns at quarterback. He seems like he's been there forever. Kind of like the Frank Harris of this year, but for Memphis. And their offense is just going to be electric. The problem is they really had a poor defense last year, so they need to upgrade that if they really want to win the conference. But I just think just based on their pure offensive just firepower they have, they're going to be one of the teams to beat here. The third team out of the top four would be South Florida, and they really made big strides last year. Really, no one expected them to do much of anything, and they ended up, going 7-6 and getting a bowl win. Alex Golish did a really nice job in his first year there, and they return again, kind of like Memphis. They return 10 starters on the offensive side of the ball. Byron Brown is a dual threat quarterback, and he really impressed in his first year down in Tampa. So I definitely like the trajectory of that of the USF program, and he's been recruiting really well. And I like the way that it sets up for them. They might be still a year away because they had a lot of close wins last year, and that kind of tends to average out the following year. But I do like them for the long term in this conference. And then the fourth team in this top group would be Tulane, and as I just mentioned, Dave, Willie Fritz, no longer there, so it's gonna be a hit to them. And Michael Pratt, he's on my Packers now as competing for the backup job. So those are definitely two big shoes to fill. But I think they made one of the best hires from the group of five ranks. They pulled John Summerall from Troy, and he just did an amazing job in his 2 years at Troy. He took them to the Sun Belt Championship his first 2 years there. So he just knows how to win in the group of five, knows how to win in the South. And I still think there's enough talent on hand to be in the conference race, even though a lot of it did go to Houston with Fritz. But I still think they're going to be in contention. So I think those top four teams are really your contenders to win the conference and really be one of the teams to challenge for the automatic group of five berth among the conferences. If you want to go further down for maybe a potential team outside of that, I would say either East Carolina or even Rice. Those two teams have a lot of returning talent, and I think could be in the mix for the conference. But I think those top four are your safe bets for who might win it. And there's a lot of dead weight in this league too. And we haven't even mentioned UAB and Trent Dilfer. I don't think we need to, but
nah.
We'll just be, we'll be betting against them again all year. But yeah, this is a pretty good conference, and those top four teams are pretty solid.
Yeah, I think I love that. I do think that Rice is going to have a nice bounce back here too, and to a smaller extent, I think Army will as well. I think Army wasn't even bad, but I mean, I'm just saying, like, they should have a pretty solid year as well with everything in place. So that's pretty good. Yeah,
I forgot to mention them.
Yeah,
they're joining the conference, which I remember the last time they were in a conference, they just could not compete at all. But I think they're doing things a little differently now, and they're running the read option, and their schedules recently haven't been that difficult anyway. So I don't think going to the AAC is like, it's not like they're joining the Big Ten. It's like they're still playing, Charlotte and Tulsa and some of these other teams that are on their level. So and they're in the same conference as Navy now. So it's obviously a great rivalry to have.
Yeah. That makes that a lot easier for them to schedule that game, I guess. It's a conference game now. That's pretty.
It's actually a non-conference game.
Oh, it's considered a non-conference game? I guess so.
Yep. And they're still going to play it like, its own weekend in December.
Yeah.
So
I would not have expected different from that. I mean, that's a huge. It's like it's like their super. It's like the Service Academy Super Bowl. So yeah, I wouldn't expect any changes there either. But it is interesting that that's a non-conference game though. So they're basically saying this is on top of everything else. That is interesting. Okay.
Yep. So they're going to play 8 conference games versus the other teams, and then that's considered non-conference. So obviously they're going to play Air Force too. So you already have 2 other conference games scheduled, and then they usually play one FCS school and then one other like random school. So
good stuff. Okay. So that's the AAC, and I mean I'll make the prediction on the AAC when we get to conference predictions later. But very good rundown there, John. Thanks for that. Let's go to the Conference USA, and here I think you do have another scenario of you have your cream of the crop at the top, but you might even have more than that with Liberty, who is also coming out of the ranks of the independents and into Conference USA. With that being said, their win total was extremely high. Like their over unders, I believe 10.5. I'm gonna check that and make sure. Yeah, 10.5. Wow, that's impressive. But it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. They are a big favorite to win this conference, and as you said, this could be another team that could make the playoff too. But there's still other pretty good teams in addition to that: Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State, and then some interesting scenarios with FIU and Sam Houston. I remember that offense was a problem for some of these teams, and defense was a problem for other teams in the Conference USA. It's kind of it's a real like land of misfit toys over this conference. But let me give it to you, John, for your Conference USA preview.
Yeah, we got into this conference, like I said, during the weekdays when they were playing these games in October. Like, you never thought you'd be so invested into a Sam Houston State game, but here we are.
Oh, yeah.
There's a new team here, Dave, this year. Kennesaw State moves up to FBS. So this is their first year. And they come into Conference USA. They're not going to be very good, but I just thought I'd mention that.
That's cool.
Just another team to get intrigued with on the weeknights. They're located in Georgia, and they kind of run like a pseudo triple option too. So it'll be interesting to watch them. But yeah, Liberty's the big favorite here, and their win total is so high because they play nobody on their schedule. Like we talked about it last year on the previous show, how they play no Power Fives. Well, it's the same thing again this year. Like they do not play a Power Five team. Their toughest game is probably at Appalachian State, which is another Group of Five contender. But outside of that, there's really no like threat on this schedule to beat them. I mean, they have a couple conference road games that maybe could be interesting. Like they play at Sam Houston, and they play Jacksonville State and Western Kentucky, who are the other, I guess, contenders in the league. But I just don't see how anyone's really going to challenge this team for the conference title. Caden Salter is returning, just putting up just a ton of points in Chadwell's system. You know him from being at Coastal Carolina and what he did with Grayson McCall, but he's done just wonders for Salter and that's team last year. Problem is, everyone saw what happened with Liberty when they go 13-0 and they make it to the Fiesta Bowl, and then just Oregon just absolutely just pummels them. Is the committee going to look at that and say, okay, well, maybe we'll take a team that's 10-1 or 11-1 from another league versus a 12-0 Liberty because Liberty is just playing a joke schedule. So that's going to be the kind of conundrum of the committee when it comes to the college football playoff. I thought last year that maybe SMU would have gotten the Group of Five berth to the bowl game instead of Liberty, but they ended up going with Liberty, and that might end up hurting them this year. But yeah, they're far and away the class of the conference. I think after that, you have to look at Western Kentucky and then Jacksonville State. Both of those teams should be the next in line. I mean, Jacksonville State, this is only their second year in FBS. Rich Rodriguez, we all are familiar with his travels throughout the years, but he's really done a good job just kind of building up this team and taking it from FCS to FBS, and just their run game is, as you would expect, is really formidable. So that's going to kind of be what they're going to lean on. And then in contrast to that, with Western Kentucky, they're just a very pass heavy team. Kind of that air raid attack. They bring in TJ Finley, who was at Texas State last year, so that's a good transfer pick up from them. And then Sam Houston, we just mentioned them. They could not score last year at all, but they brought in a number of transfers, and they sort of gotten better towards the end of the year on offense, and their defense was still pretty good. So I think if they get a little bit of offense, I think they can make a jump up. And plus the fact that they lost so many close games last year, again, that's one of those things that's kind of due to regress in the other direction. So I think they could be in line for a bounce back year. So Yeah, definitely Liberty on top, but then I would say the next teams under them, Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State, and Sam Houston is kind of the next pack. And then the rest of the teams are just going to be not really that great at all. But hey, it's a Tuesday night. Like, what else do you have to do than bet like Louisiana Tech and New Mexico State? Like, well, I'll be there for it. But yeah, New Mexico State should have a drop off after Jerry Kill uh, left. I don't know what happened there. Like he cited health reasons again, but then he shows up at Vanderbilt. He's like an assistant there, and he brings over. They brought over a lot of New Mexico State players, and they actually made one of the hires that I do not like. Tony Sanchez, the old UNLV coach, who was just horrific at UNLV, and New Mexico State does not have any kind of the resources that UNLV does, which is not a ton to begin with, and it's just not going to go well there. But um, yeah, I did not like that hire. But yeah, Liberty, as I said, is the clear favorite here, and a couple teams right behind them. And the main thing here is, will Liberty kind of get like boxed out essentially because of their weak schedule?
Honestly, I wouldn't have that much sympathy if they did, though, because like you just said, like their
No,
bowl game was so terrible. Like, the cream rises the crop in the big spot. So, like to give you an example, like if it's between them and Boise State is like 11-1, and they're 12-0, I'm picking Boise State. Like I think Boise State.
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll get to Boise in a minute. They actually have some tough non-conference games. Like Boise's playing, I believe, I think they're playing at Oregon. We'll get to it in a minute, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they're playing at Oregon while Liberty's playing at UMass. I mean, come on, like there's quite the difference there. Yeah, Boise's playing at Oregon week 2, so um, there's no comparison.
No, no. You made a really good call in New Mexico State. I mean, you can say that they went 10-5, but they lost everybody. It's going to be a completely different team. I don't even know if they're going to be 500 this year. Like, it's going to be a rough year for
I
them.
would say no. I'd say the worst teams in this conference are going to be New Mexico State. Louisiana Tech is just going to be absolutely horrific. And then Kennesaw, but that's no fault of their own because, like I said, they're brand new to FBS, so we can't expect much of anything from them this year. Even a couple wins would be nice for them, but the other two are going to be really bad.
Yeah, yeah. I'm with you on that. So, yeah, good stuff on the Conference USA. Thanks for your comprehensive preview. Let's go head over to the MAC. And again, MACtion is always fun. It's a good time. And even the championship game winds up being, sometimes the championship game has juice. I mean, even though it was an ugly game, it was a pretty exciting, it was a pretty close finish, and Miami of Ohio won. They will be the defending MAC champions this year. Toledo is, always a power, but they've lost a lot of people. And then after that, you've got a few other teams that we can point to, but I'll give it to you for the MAC preview.
Yeah, the interesting here is the MAC is like many of these other conferences, they've gotten rid of divisions. So there's no more East and West division. It's just one conference, but they're kind of doing like scheduling pods where they put you with two other schools to kind of keep rivalries together. I'd have to look up what the exact pods are, but I know one for sure is like the three Michigan schools are together. So Western, Central, and Eastern. So they play each other every year and then they kind of rotate the other games. So that'll be something to watch as it gets later on in the year. So you could have two like old West teams essentially playing for the championship or vice versa, two old East teams. But yeah, Miami, Ohio is going to be the favorite here. Uh, they pretty much won the championship last year with they had no offense and they just won with their defense and special teams because Brett Gabbert got hurt during the middle of the season, and that's just essentially how they had to win. Well, Gabbert it does return. You have to wonder about his injury concerns. I saw a thing on X earlier. It's like his 6th year starting the first game of the year, which is just crazy. Like one of the only people to ever do that. But yeah, they're going to be the favorite. They have a really solid defense again. And then with Gabbert returning and some of these offensive weapons they have, they're going to be uh, in line to win the conference. As you mentioned, Dave, with Toledo, uh, DeQuan Finn went to Baylor, so there's going to be change there at the quarterback position. And they just lost a lot of other players. They had a cornerback drafted in round 1 of the NFL. So that's just a huge loss. I mean, like, where do you have a MAC player like go round 1 in the NFL? Like, just think about that. Like, it's going to be a big loss on their defense. I kind of think last year was the year for Toledo to get the job done and finally win the MAC, and they just couldn't do it. And I'm not a fan of their coach, Jason Candle. He just always seems to underdeliver. And now with even less talent, I think they're going to take a step back. Same thing with Ohio. Like they just got decimated by the portal. It's going to be hard for them to really recover from losing like Rourke, their quarterback, left. I believe he went to Indiana with Signetti, as we talked about. So that's a huge loss, and they lost a bunch of other players. So it's just a complete rebuild, and it's kind of the sad world of group of five teams. They're like feeder systems for the power schools with like the money and everything else that they can offer that Ohio can't. So you kind of hate to see that, but yeah, they're not going to be a factor this year. I guess the two other teams would be like Northern Illinois and Bowling Green. Actually, Bowling Green does return a number of players. This is probably their best team in a while. I'm not a huge fan of their coach Leffler, but I have to say, like, he's done okay. Like, getting Bowling Green to back bowl games is pretty impressive, and they return just a number of players in terms of their returning production. And their quarterback Connor Bazelak was a former Missouri transfer, so he's got SEC experience, and he was okay last year. So I definitely think they can be a contender. But overall, I think this is probably Miami of Ohio's conference to win or lose. Again, it might depend on whether or not Gabbert stays healthy for the duration of the year. But even in like last year, they kind of showed that they can get it done ugly without him. But I think Miami is your team to beat here, and slightly behind them, I would say, are like Bowling Green, Toledo, and Northern Illinois are kind of like your next tier. And then after that, it's just kind of meh for the rest of the league.
Right.
Kind of sad. But again, Wednesday nights in November we'll be watching the match, and that's like one of the highlights of the year.
Yeah, I mean it's always unfortunate to see the MAC against anybody else. Like they just never measure up, especially in bowls. But sometimes they'll have juice. Like I know they were surprisingly good one year in the bowls, so like that's give them all the credit in the world for that. And Miami's defense is genuinely great. It's very, very good. So we'll see what they can do this year with that team. That's a great rundown. Thank you for the MAC preview, John. Let's head to the Mountain West now and look at what's happening here. Another competitive conference, although I feel like this is another case where you have a pretty clear-cut favorite. I think Boise State would be that clear-cut favorite. UNLV had a really good year last year, and I do believe they're returning a lot of their team back for this year as well. So it should be a really good year for UNLV. And Fresno State could be interesting. Air Force could be interesting too. And then there's a new coach for Wyoming as well. So that'll be a new era for the Cowboys. So let's head over to you for the Mountain West preview.
Yeah, I love the Mountain West because this gives you your kind of late night degenerate action on Fridays and Saturdays, and this is great. And like we mentioned, they have the scheduling alliance with the Pac-2. So every single team in the Mountain West is going to be playing either Oregon State or Washington State. They all have a game against them. And it's not considered a conference game in the standings. It's just a non-conference game. So they're all playing officially 7 conference games. So to get that, nugget out there. Boise's clearly the favorite here. They just named their starting quarterback actually, and it is not a USC transfer, Malachi Nelson.
Interesting.
Too much.
Yeah,
to many people's surprise.
It's interesting because I didn't feel 100% that he was going to get that job, but definitely there were a lot of rumblings that he could. So I am not necessarily hugely surprised by it. And also, not only that, but maybe he slides in later in the season anyway. So that's an interesting decision. I'll tell you what. I mean, that was definitely a decision. I don't fault the coaching staff for going that way because again, like it was not a lock. I didn't think it was a lock, even though it was a pretty good chance. I didn't think it was a lock. It was interesting though.
Yeah, I guess they just they thought he would transfer in and like take the job easily, but it's Maddox Madsen who is going to be the starter, and he played last year, so maybe it's more familiarity with the system.
Yeah.
The the play caller is Dirk Cutter, who was the coach at Boise like long time ago, and then remember him recently being the coach of the Bucks, and he actually came back to Boise a couple of years ago, and now he's back again as the offensive coordinator. So it's just familiarity with that system, but they have like an All-American running back and Ashton Genty. Like this dude is an absolute just freak. Like he could be like a dark horse Heisman contender. Like he just does it all out of the backfield and running the ball. They pretty much returned their entire starting lineup on defense, but they had a not a great season defensively. So you'd hope that would improve, especially because their DC took over midway through the year as head coach. They fired Avalos and they promoted Spencer Danielson, who's still there. He has the job, but you figure their defense would have been better with the defensive coordinator being promoted to head coach. But we'll see. But they're definitely very talented and probably a favorite. But I don't know if I'd necessarily pick them to win the conference. You mentioned UNLV, and yeah, they had a really good year. They kind of fell off a little bit towards the end because maybe they didn't get as much of the close game luck that they did earlier on in the year, but still for UNLV to win 9 games and get to a conference championship, uh, just a fantastic year for what they had been recently. And they did lose their quarterback transferred out, but I like the guys they brought in from the FCS level. Matthew Saluka from Holy Cross, who's a really dynamic run pass threat, and then Haj Malik Williams from Campbell. Again, like either one of these guys, I think is fine in this offense, and they have a lot of uh, weapons around him at the running back and receiver position. So I think their offense is going to be fine. Their defense does have to improve. Uh, like I said, they kind of faltered down the stretch, but I think they could definitely be in contention for the Mountain West Championship. They do have a really brutal schedule, though. Just looking at their, they play Houston and Kansas and Syracuse, and they're at Hawaii, at Oregon State. Like it's a pretty tough schedule, but they're definitely pretty talented. So I like UNLV's chances of keeping, or being in contention for the Mountain West this year. I would have been higher on Fresno State, but unfortunately, Jeff Tedford had to step down for health reasons, and we, certainly wish him well. And but this has happened before, and their interim coach stepped in and they won the bowl game last year, and they definitely have a number of returning starters from a team that went 9-4. But there's just kind of that unknown factor, without having him for the entire season versus one game. And then another team that I really like is actually Wyoming. Dave, you mentioned them. Yeah, they do have a new coach, but Jay Sawvell was Craig Bowles' like right hand man and assistant for a number of years. So really, nothing is going to change that much. And their defense is just going to be nasty, and they have one of the best home field advantages in the Mountain West. So I like their chances a lot. They get Boise at home later on in the year, and that's just going to be a slugfest if I've ever seen one. So definitely liking Wyoming. Their first game is at Arizona State. I could see an upset in that game for sure. At Arizona State, definitely like this Wyoming team. And then the last team I'll mention is Colorado State. And, Jay Norvell's done a really nice job kind of building up this team over the last couple of years. Like when he got there, there was like nothing there. And he has one of the best group of 5, well, maybe one of the best receivers in the country in Torrey Horton. And, their quarterback, Braden Fowler Nickliosi, he's returning and he's really good at the deep ball. And that's exactly what they're going to do. Just him to Horton like all year. I think they're going to be ready for Colorado in week number 3. So that's a game that you kind of have to circle. So I think Colorado State, as they kind of had built up both lines and they're getting in more players, I think they definitely could be a contender in this conference as well. So I think those are the kind of top 4 teams, top 5 teams. So Boise, UNLV, Fresno, Wyoming, and Colorado State, I think are your contenders. I didn't mention Air Force. I don't know. We don't know what to make of them. Like they're losing a lot of production, but it's almost like plug and play sometimes with Air Force because it's just the system that they run, and you got to trust their coach. But losing someone like Zach Larrier, who just knows that option in offense, it's a tough thing. So I really don't know what to think of Air Force. So I'm gonna kind of leave them out of my projected kind of favorites. But it wouldn't surprise me if they were kind of up there in contention because it always seems like they are. So, yeah, I think, like I said, the top five that you kind of have to really consider are Boise, UNLV, Wyoming, and then Fresno, Colorado State, Air Force, I guess, would put in the next kind of group.
I think what I see in this conference is you could see some pretty close games between the middle and the bottom of the conference, like, and even like the top as you mentioned with like UNLV and what Boise has. I love the nugget about Colorado State though, because they've definitely been steadily improving every year. That's gonna be a really good game against Colorado. I mean, by the time they get to that game, I'm very curious who's gonna be favored. By that point, maybe Colorado State would be favored in that game. We'll see.
And I guess I'll mention Hawaii too. Should be much improved this year.
Yeah.
Timmy Chang, former Hawaii quarterback, now the head coach, and we'll get to watch them this weekend. They're in a week 0 game playing Delaware State for some reason. I just don't understand that. But hey, it's football to I guess watch, and it's midnight out here, Dave. Where you are, it's a little more reasonable.
Is it going to be on TV? Is it going to be on
TV? It's on like this app. It's like the Team One Sports app or something that you can somehow. I remember watching a couple games last year. Otherwise, like if you have to pay like pay-per-view like $70 or something if you live in Hawaii, which is just crazy.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. That's Hawaii. I'm not gonna pay $70 for Hawaii. That's crazy.
Right.
Yeah. So Hawaii does get a couple of very winnable games too. I think they have UCLA going to visit them early in the season. I'm like, I would take Hawaii.
Yes, that's right. Oh yeah, I was just gonna say that could be a game that Hawaii might win outright because they already have the game against Delaware State this Saturday, so they already have played a game, and they get the run and shoot. Like that was kind of the whole thing. Remember, like Mike Leach, you never really bet him on a bowl game or the first game of the year because they just haven't been in sync yet. Well, the offense will be in sync because they've already played a game, and then you have the UCLA just kind of disaster at this point, and first game for Deshaun Foster and heading out to the islands. Hawaii is definitely live.
Oh my goodness, are they ever? I mean, and Deshaun Foster, who has like almost no coaching experience, like
exactly. Yeah, I don't think there's anybody on his like coaching staff that's been like a head coach or anything. So yeah, it's gonna be rough. I mean, like we kind of talked about, he's just kind of thrown into the position. Like there's really no one else at that point. So I could see it being they just clean house after 1 year and then bring in whoever they want. But yeah, definitely Hawaii is on the radar for week 1.
Yeah, Deshaun Foster, the the sacrificial lamb, if you will. Yeah, hate to see it. He's a good guy. I hate to see that, but you know what? Sometimes what can you do? That's just like Chip Kelly left them high and dry the way he left like that, like right before, like we just talked about last week. We won't have to rehash it, but so we'll see. There's a question from Jordy. I'm going to save that for after the Sun Belt preview, so I'll get to that in a second. But it concerns our guy Billy Napier, so I'll be glad to answer that in just a little bit. But first, let's go to the Sun Belt preview. And James Madison is coming, but they did lose their coach and they did lose some other key personnel. So I'm very, very interested to see how you will handicap them this year. Appalachian State seems like the team to beat. You also have Arkansas State and Texas State. So it's another solid conference this year in the Fun Belt. So I'll give it to you for the Sun Belt preview.
Yeah, I love the Sun Belt. This is a great conference. And this is the only conference that still does divisions, which is interesting. I don't know why they haven't changed with the rest of the NCAA. But,
it seems Sheeran, right? The total divisions now, like why? Like,
well, they haven't changed. Like they've had this structure, and I don't know what is the reason for it. I mean, it's kind of a little bit of a competitive imbalance. Like the East Division had been much more competitive than the West Division the previous few years, but who knows what the thinking is. But Yeah, I mean, Appalachian State is going to be the favorite here, especially with the changes going on at James Madison, losing their coach and quarterback and everything else. But James Madison should still be pretty solid. I mean, we'll get to them in a minute, but yeah, App State, it's kind of now or never for them. The way the conference just kind of shakes out this year. Not a huge fan of their coach. Again, Sean Clarkson, other guys kind of under delivered since he's been at App State, but they return a number of players on offense and defense, and this should be their best team yet. Joey Aguilar returns at quarterback, and they're always going to have a solid run game and solid defense. So App State definitely is going to be one of the favorites out of the East Division, and then you know James Madison. I mean, they do lose a lot of players, but they bring in Chesney from Holy Cross, who has made Holy Cross into like an FCS playoff team, which is really hard to do. And it's essentially almost a brand new team. They bring so many transfers, but I kind of like just the coaching hire, and they bring in Dylan Morris, who was like one of the high rated recruit at Washington many years ago at quarterback. So I think this can work out. I don't know if it's going to be like a Sun Belt level championship kind of team, but I still think they're going to be like bowling, and they'll be in the East race for sure. But it's not going to be an 11-2 year like it was last year for sure. But give it a couple years, I think they could be back on the map. I don't really like anyone else in this East Division. I mean, Marshall loses a ton, and just again another kind of underperforming coach with a lot of talent, Charles Huff. And I don't know, I'm just not a fan of him. I'm not a fan of Clay Helton at Georgia Southern for sure. Dave, his track record. Both of those teams are quarterbacks, so not big on any of them. And then Coastal Carolina, Grayson McCall is no longer there. So the East Division is just kind of a mess. App State should pretty much win that. I think Coastal is going to take a big step back without McCall. Very interesting week 1 game. Next Thursday night is Coastal Carolina at Jacksonville State. So definitely we'll have that one on my TV to watch. It's a good group of 5 game. But then when you move over to the West, you have a couple more teams here that could be in contention. Texas State is like everyone's hot pick to win the conference and represent them and possibly get that group of 5 bid. They bring in JMU's quarterback Jordan McLeod, who was just fantastic last year, for the Monarchs, and they return a number of other. He's like the only new player. They bring in or return almost all their other starters on offense and defense, and this is like their first winning year in a number of years last year under GJ Kinney, who is recruiting well too. They just have a ton of great vibes right now around the program, and the way their schedule sets up is just fantastic. They get a game against UTSA at home, which is a fellow potential team that they're competing for with the Group 5 bid, and then they host Arizona State. So rarely do you see the scenario with the Power 5 team coming to a Sun Belt team, and that's exactly what you had. And it's on a Thursday night. Like, this is going to be an absolute zoo, at Texas State that night. And the rest of their schedule is not bad at all. I mean, they play like dregs of the league, like Old Dominion and ULM, like on the road. And then, I guess Troy is kind of tougher, but again, we mentioned it before, they lost their coach, so they're going to be a much different team. And then South Alabama, again, another school that lost their coach. So very, very manageable schedule. And, I do like all the talent that Texas State has accumulated, and just, how they kind of just jumped up last year. And I really like their chances. So I would say Texas State is definitely would be my pick in the West. I mean, some of these other teams are, I guess, closer to them, but I would not say they're on the level of Texas State. Louisiana's just been kind of a 6-6 kind of team recently. Ever since Napier left Louisiana, funny enough, they've just been 6-7 the last 2 years. And they do have a bunch of players returning, but there's just nothing here that really excites me. And then we move on to Arkansas State. Now, they could have some potential. I will say that. I'm not a fan of Butch Jones, but he's really been recruiting well, and their offense just completely took off last year after they inserted Jalen Rayner into the starting lineup as a true freshman. And if you remember the first game of the year last year, it was like 77-0 Oklahoma, and Butch Jones was literally crying on the sideline. And somehow, like through they ended up, they're like, all right, whatever, we're just gonna put the freshman in, and like their offense took off after that. And now they have 10 starters returning on offense, including Rayner, and a bunch of talented players on that side of the ball. So I would say they're probably the closest team, honestly, to Texas State at this point in the West. And then the other teams are just kind of, like I said, South Alabama lost their coach. Troy, again, rebuilding. If Summerall had stayed at Troy, they definitely would have had something, but it's just like a brand new team again. And I really don't know much about this Gerard Parker guy. He's their new coach, so we need to get some more data on him. And then, Southern Miss and ULM, Louisiana Monroe is always one of the worst teams in the country. I don't know how anybody can be successful there. That is just, it's impossible. So yeah, I think it's pretty clear it's going to be like App State and Texas State for the championship. But if I had to pick like who could surprise, I would say probably Arkansas State would be my kind of like surprise pick. But I think this is pretty cut and dry for App State and Texas State, and I think both have a great chance to get the Group of Five bid.
Yeah, nothing for me to add. I mean, that's pretty much on point. Like, I would not have picked JMU to try to make a run to upset anybody here. Just too much turnover. And pretty well said. I nothing to add for me. So that wraps it up for the Sun Belt. So that's all our conferences for FBS, and we covered independence as well. So let's get to Jordy's question, and then we'll roll into conference predictions, which are going to be really good. I mean, we can also, like you said, you can add like other conferences or other teams that you think can make the playoff. So the question from Jordy is, can Billy Napier navigate a gauntlet schedule around and get a year 4? We talked about that last week. The answer is no. I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush. No. There's no way he's going to. I don't even know if he's going to get through the season. We talked about that. We were even breaking it down like week by week. It is an impossible schedule, John. And if you want to recap some of that, I mean, it's basically, I just don't see how he gets out of it at all, let alone like get to another year. I mean, no, I don't even think he gets through this year. So it's going to be tough.
Yeah, no, it's a gauntlet because I think we pulled it up before when we had their schedule up. Like their last 5 teams that they play are all ranked in the top like 15, and it's not like they have one guaranteed win. It's an FCS game against Stanford. Other than that, like their other non-conference games are their 3 rivals in Florida. Miami, Florida State, and then UCF. And then on top of it, you have just this brutal SEC schedule. I just don't see him making out of this. Although I will say, I do think I like them to win the first game against Miami at home in the Swamp. So that'll definitely be, on the radar to bet. But I just, as the year goes on, that schedule is just way too brutal. If they somehow can like make a bowl of 6 wins, like build a statue for the guy, because that is just an incredible feat against that schedule. But I think they might go like 4-8 or 5-7, and they'll probably get rid of him.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I feel like the highlight of the season could well be week 1, as you just said. Like, I think that's their best shot to have their best moment. Jordy adds, it would take a miracle, I think, at this point. Oh, very much. He's game over emote. That's great. I didn't know they had a game over. They get a game over emoji on YouTube. That's great. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they made kind of its own fun pool, like predict what week, kind of like what we did with the Scott Frost when he got fired. Like, what week will he get fired? Like, could do that with Billy Napier.
We were way off on Frost. He only lasted 2 weeks that year. It was the stupid. They played the Ireland game against Northwestern, and he was up 10 points at half, and he did an onside kick coming out of halftime and just completely threw away all of his momentum. Like, what a jackass! Like, who does that?
Absolutely. It's ridiculous. So I think Napier will do better than that, but it's still not going to be that long for Napier. I mean, maybe he'll get to rivalry week. I'd be surprised. So that's it for predictions. Feel free to keep commenting in chat, everyone, if you're watching us on YouTube tonight. So let's get to the conference predictions, and as a part of that, you can add teams you think can make the playoff from each conference. So I'll lay out the conferences. You have the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, ACC. And then in the group of 5, you have the AAC, the MAC, the Mountain West, and the Sun Belt. Did I miss one? I feel like I missed one. Conference USA. Yeah, I gotta put Conference USA up there. So Conference USA is part of that too. It was interesting, John, because we were just talking about like who's gonna be the representative of the group of 5 out of Conference USA. I mean, based on what you were saying with these previews, I'm gonna be really curious who you would pick out of this group, because you were saying that Boise State might not be the team to win the Mountain West, which would make sense. I mean, you can definitely see some comers, take the spot instead. But if that's true, then who's coming out of who's the team that's going to come out of there? Is it still Boise State, or is it the new? You know what I mean? Like, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say about that too. So let's get your conference predictions. I'll give you mine afterwards. So take it away, John.
What conference do you want to start with, Dave?
Oh, sure. We can go one by one. So let's go Big Ten. Start.
Okay. I think this one's pretty simple. I think it's going to be Oregon and Ohio State.
Yep.
Playing for the championship. And then other teams that would be in consideration for the playoff, I think, are Penn State and Iowa. I think those 4 teams could be, not saying they're all going to, but I think those are your potential teams to make it. So those 4, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Iowa, I think are your potential playoff teams.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I think Iowa's got a lot of juice. I think they're set up very well to win a lot of games. One, their offense can't be as bad as last year. It's literally impossible. So I think that's 2. And even when it is bad, it's still a team that can get to the conference championship game in a lot of years. So I think it's all lined up well for Iowa. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good pick there, and I agree with it. So nothing for me. That's pretty much how I have it too. I don't really have anything to add. Like, I think the only thing I would say is maybe USC will sneak in there to replace one of the other teams. I could see
that. They were like my 5th team if I had to add, but I kind of want to see it from their defense and just the whole adjustment to a new conference. I know I'm kind of, hypocritical picking Oregon, but I just think Oregon is so. I just think they're so loaded.
Yeah.
And their coaching, I just think is so good. So I think USC will make it eventually, and they would be like right on my cutoff.
Yeah, I mean, because honestly, like, there could be 3 teams from the Big Ten that make it to the playoff, right? So it's definitely possible. Okay, let's go to the SEC. So SEC predictions.
Yeah, this one is tough. I'm gonna say Georgia, obviously, and then it's really tough to pick this next team. I'm not gonna go with Texas. I know it's easy to say Texas. I'm gonna go old fashioned. Georgia and Alabama will be my prediction for the SEC. And then teams like that could make it here. I think there's 8 teams here that could make the college football playoff. I think obviously Georgia and Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss, LSU, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M. Obviously not all of them are going to make it, but I think those teams are your teams that could make it. Obviously I did not say Tennessee. I don't think they are good enough to be up there. But those teams I mentioned could make the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with most of these. Like, even Bama. I mean, Bama still has Jalen Milroe, even though it's a real season of transition for them. I don't see them having, 11 wins or anything like that. But I do think that they have enough to get to a playoff. And we'll see if it happens. For me, Georgia's the obvious one, so we'll go with Georgia too. I'm going to take LSU and Missouri as the other teams that could come up from here. I am pretty high on Ole Miss, but you made a really good point last week that I don't think the paper championship is going to really tell you a whole lot. So I really could see Ole Miss. Ole Miss has got a really, it's a very binary situation for Ole Miss. I feel like they're either going to win the conference or they're going to be right there. They're going to have 11 wins and they're going to make the playoff, or they're going to just flame out like crazy and they're going to end up like 7-5 or something like that. So there's no in between with this team. It's either going to be a spectacular season or a disaster. I don't see any in between. So I'll side on the good side of that, but I honestly would not be surprised if it goes either way. I think that's it for me. I mean, I agree with you at Tennessee. I don't think Oklahoma is going to really do much. The one team I might watch for is Texas A&M because they really are a talented team. I mean, now that they have a new coach, I feel like they might actually have a nice year. So we'll see.
I agree. I think they could be like your sleeper team to make the playoff.
Yeah,
for sure. Like that's why I mentioned. You know what? I kind of agree with you, Dave. I'm going to get rid of Oklahoma out of my potentials. I think it just might be a little bit too much of a step up in competition for them. So yeah, I'll say Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU, Missouri, and A&M. Those are the 6 teams that I'd be having consideration for the playoff. And out of those, I think only 4 make it. Yeah. But those are like the 6 that could make it.
So let me ask you really quickly with Texas. Texas did have a really good year last year. Is this team that's gonna jump like springboard off that and have another great year, or were they more likely to fall back into the pack because they now, like you said, they're really gonna have a big step up in their conference schedule? So,
I think they're more SEC ready than Oklahoma just because
they
have a more quarterback and just their roster in general. I think is more SEC players on it at the moment. So I would say that they're more so ready to kind of take on that grind. And even if, like I said, if they go 9-3, they're still going to be fine to make it in the SEC. That's why I don't think they're going to make the championship game, but I think they're going to be in contention, obviously, for a playoff spot.
Yeah. They had a lot of moments last year that proved that they can hang in the SEC. One, they were really close. They were right there with Bama. They should have beat Bama. Like it was right there. They made the playoff, and I'm trying to use my memory here. This is Washington versus.
Yep, they lost to Washington.
They lost to Washington, right? Yeah. So it was a great game though. It was so close though. It was right there. It was right there for them. So yeah, that's kind of how I see that. And yeah, nothing for me to add. That's pretty good. Nothing more for me to add anyway. But this is interesting too because I do think it's a great story, feel good story. Similar to Ole Miss, I don't know if that's going to be their peak or if they can build off of that. I feel like it could. Again, I have just honestly no idea. It could go either way. So I'm rooting for him though. It's a great story. I really like Mizzou. So we'll see if it works out for him. All right. So now we're gonna segue over to the Big 12, and John, this is hard. You have now here you really do have 9 teams you could pick to make the playoff from this conference. So, John, I'll give it to you. What are your Big 12 predictions?
Yeah. So caveat by saying I only think 1 or 2 will actually make it from here. I'm going to say 2, just because I think these teams are going to end up being better long term than say the ACC teams. And I think just because they're going to have more quality schedules. But my championship game prediction will be Kansas State and UCF. That will be my prediction for the Big 12. But I think there's 8 teams here that could make the championship game. So I think we talked about it last week. So Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Arizona, West Virginia, Kansas, and UCF. I think those are the teams that could play for the championship game, and I have Kansas State and UCF.
Yeah, Kansas State never disappoints. They're always going to be in the hunt all the time, and very good. Their program is in a very good spot. I too have Kansas State. I will take Utah as the other team from the Big 12. I do kind of get the sense that you're feeling like Utah's a too good to be true situation, and I think I agree with that. I do, because I feel like the one thing that always sticks out with me, Utah, is that whenever they play really good at teams with other NFL quality players, you can see there's a clear they clearly seem outmatched in that spot. I'm very interested to see how they're going to handle the step up in competition in some levels. I mean, the Pac-12 is a good conference too. I mean, it was a solid conference for a long time. So don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a lot of great athletes there have been a lot of great athletes in the Pac-12, but yeah, K-State's a different animal. Like you talk about the home field advantage there, it's totally a different ballgame. And Utah's a great home field advantage too, but the road games are going to be tough.
I just feel like every time Utah's had like really big expectations the last few years, I mean, they've done okay, but they've never like fully reached that potential that they could have.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's well said. I completely agree with that. I that whenever you see them projected to be like, oh, this is the team to beat, that's when I'm backing off. Like when they're not, that's when I kind of jump on with them. But yeah, I would rather take the proven team, Kansas State, who's been solid the whole time. I think you mentioned Oklahoma State and Kansas too, which is solid. Arizona's going to be a real wild card, no pun intended. Like that's going to be interesting. We'll see if they can hold up. Okay, let's go to the ACC. Not going to be nearly as exciting. In fact, I don't even know what you say about Florida State. I mean, are you going to pick them? We'll see. I'll give it to you for your predictions.
Honestly, do we even have to pick this? I just like. I think they'll get one team. Whoever wins the conference will get in. I don't think they're going to get a second team. I'll just say Florida State because I like Norvell and I just think they're recruiting on another level compared to the rest of these teams. So Florida State, and then take your pick for the other team. Honestly, it could be Clemson, it could be Miami, it could be SMU, it could be Louisville, it could be NC State. It all comes down to the schedules, really. And I honestly, I didn't dive into kind of who plays who. I know there could be a real like out of left field team like Louisville last year really was because of the way their schedule broke. So just to be different, I'm going to say I'll say Florida State and SMU. Why
okay.
not?
I'm going to go Florida State and Vatech because I did look at Vatech. Vatech does have an easier schedule than most in that conference. And I feel like if they can just get through the first couple of games, and if they somehow become...
Actually, you know what? I'm sorry, scratch my SMU pick because I talked last week about how like the step up in competition would be a little bit too much for them, and I do think it will be.
Yeah,
playing 5 teams every week. Not to say that they're going to have a good year, but yeah, I can't go against what I said last time. So scratch that. Florida State and Louisville was a rematch of last.
Not bad. Yeah, that's solid. Okay, so that's the ACC. Let's go to the AAC now. Oh boy, wow. I'm very okay. Let me just give it to you. Who do you have from the AAC?
Memphis, like I talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I think their just experience with a quarterback and just how loaded they are on that side of the ball, I think will carry them. And then I'm going to go with UTSA just because they're so well coached, and I know they're bringing in a new quarterback as a starter, but he's been with the program. And I just think overall, in terms of their talent, I think they're ahead of Tulane at this point, who, like we talked about, lost a lot. And then USF was just kind of another year away. So Memphis and UTSA are my AAC championship.
I echo both. Yeah, I echo both of those. I love both teams. I think those are going to be the two. Oh, thanks, Jordy. Jordy says those are great picks from the both of you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean... Oh, go ahead, John.
No, I just said thank you. I appreciate the positive feedback that we're not like picking the bottom of the barrel here. So that's good.
It's a good sign. So thank you, Jordy. So Conference USA. I mean, do we have to pick a second team?
Sure. I mean, they have a championship game, so why not?
All right. Go for it, John.
I'll just say Sam Houston. I think they're going to make a big jump this year. So
okay.
Liberty and Sam Houston.
Okay. I'm gonna go Liberty and just say Jacksonville State because they are going to be in every game. Their defense is that good, so I feel like they could be in every game. So that's what I'll go with. Okay. I mean that's.
Would you say Dave Jacksonville?
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay. No, I like that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because you have an experienced coach. I mean, I'm not the biggest Rich Rodriguez fan either, but but the thing about it is
He
JSU.
can outwit these guys in the
Right,
Conference USA.
right. So there is, so there, it's a gettable situation for him. So I feel like I think they'll be around for a while. So so that's the Conference USA. Let's go to the MAC, and we'll give it to you for your predictions.
I think Miami, Ohio is the obvious first choice, and then I'm gonna say Bowling Green.
All right, yeah, solid choices both. I'm gonna go with Miami of Ohio as well. Northern Illinois. I don't know who of the two is the better team this year, but I think they're both going to be right there.
Yeah, they're Northern Illinois is just always pesky. Like they always just seem to hang around. And I don't think Rocky Lombardi is there for like his 25th year anymore. So they'll have to get another quarterback. But yeah, no, they always have a competitive team at Northern Illinois.
Yep, good spot. All right, so last is this the last one? No, we still have a couple more. Mountain West. John, I'll give it to you.
Uh I'm gonna say Wyoming and Boise.
I'm gonna say yeah, Wyoming's good. That's solid. Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, I think I kind of I mean, it's not exciting from a content perspective, but that first of all, Boise. I mean, that's easy. I mean, I'm not even. We don't need to sweat that one. But the second team, yeah, I'm gonna go Wyoming too. I was originally gonna take UNLV, but I'm like, I just feel like they had a nice run, and I don't feel like it's gonna carry over. I mean, I'm not exactly. They'll have a good year, but I don't know if it's necessarily gonna be that the same kind of. Like you said, they were even falling off at the end of the season they were playing. Like, and it's true. Like the last 3 weeks, they were really not the same team at all. So, I'll probably go with the same two picks. So that brings us to the Sun Belt, and from the Sun Belt, John, who do you have?
Yeah, so you have to stay with the divisions here. I think it's pretty simple. No surprises. App State and Texas State. Um, I kind of wanted to go elsewhere from App State, but there's really no one else I like in that division. You know, if James Madison still had all their pieces together, I would take them. There's just so much unknown with how good they're going to be with this new team essentially. So by default, I'll just go App State, and then like I said, I really like this Texas State team, so we'll stick with them out of the West. And I guess Arkansas State would be my second choice, but I'll stick with Texas State to play Appalachian State.
Yeah, that's solid. I mean, there's no reason for me to get fancy here. I'm going to take the same two teams. So Texas State, Appalachian State. That is all for the conferences. We do see could be quite a lot of debate for the non-automatic bids, and there could be a little bit of debate for the group of 5 college football playoff team. And I think if you were to tackle that right now, John, like who's your pick to come out of the group of 5 to represent the play in the playoff?
That is really tough. Well, I think we can eliminate Conference USA because I think it's too weak. And Liberty showed last year that even if they go 13-0 against that schedule, it doesn't really matter. So I think we can eliminate them, and then we love the MAC, but let's be honest, it's not that strong of a conference, and the winner is probably going to have 3 losses or 4 losses, so they're going to be out. So it really comes down to the Sun Belt, the AAC, and the Mountain West. And I'm really not that high on Boise. I really do like Wyoming, but I don't think I can pick Wyoming to make the group of 5 bid. So I think it comes down to me between the Sun Belt and the AAC. Um, I'm going to go with Memphis. I just think historically the winner of the AAC has gotten like that big bowl game, and now it's obviously transition to the group of 5 winner. And I just think that they're just way too experienced and talented compared to the rest of the AAC that's going through some changes. And I think they're going to have a little better strength of schedule compared to the Sun Belt. So I'll go with Memphis out of the AAC to get it. My second choice would be the Sun Belt winner. So that I would say that would be Texas State, but it'll be close. Like I said, Texas State's schedule sets up pretty well for them to make kind of an impact on the on the rankings and just kind of boost themselves up by playing a Power Five team and like playing another Group of Five team in UTSA. But I still think the AAC is a little bit stronger, and I'll just go with that precedent, and I'll take Memphis to get that bid.
Yeah, Memphis is a pretty good pick. I think you've seen them in bowl season a lot, and so I think the committee will know that, and they'll use that in their rank. They'll use that in their evaluation. I feel like they'll see enough from them on their resume and what they've seen in years past to put them in if they are the winner of the conference. So it's a good spot. And certainly if UCF were still in that conference, that would be a pick too, because they've proven it a lot. They've been making run. They had an undefeated season. There's a lot of that going on. My instinct says Boise State, but everything you said is correct. Like they really are in a period of transition right now, and I don't know if that's gonna be enough to hold up over the entire season. And the Mountain West is not. I mean, I'm not saying it's the SEC, but it's there are some teams that are pretty good. So it's not going to be that big of a cakewalk for Boise State at all. But I think the brand is going to probably carry them if there are any tiebreakers involved otherwise. I think that's what they have going for them. Other than that, I mean, if it's purely based on football, I might even take like Texas State or Appalachian State to be the team. And Memphis. Like Memphis is a great call too. Like I like Memphis as well. So, but I officially,
it's really exciting to follow, like down the stretch of the season, because all these conferences just competing with one another. It's just going to make these games even more meaningful.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge because it's like you're going to get a representative, which is the biggest thing about it. Is like a Group of Five have been shut out of the playoff a lot during the playoff era so far. So nice to know that they'll have a guaranteed spot with this battle, and it should be really, like you said, it's going to be really great. So Boise State for me, Memphis for John. John, that's a good prediction. Let's now segue into additional playoff predictions. Basically, like, who would you see in the championship game? I mean, we're trying to predict every single round would be impossible, so let's just skip ahead to the good stuff. Georgia is got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, I think. I mean, after getting shut out, that seemed a little messed up. So I wonder if you have them winning, or how would you play the championship this year?
Yeah, so just in general, if we wanted to go back to like the conferences, I would say the SEC is going to get 4. Big Ten will get 3. Big 12 will get 2. ACC will get 1. Notre Dame will be 1, and then the Group of Five. So those are your 12 teams. And then I think the championship game, we'll go with the Dan Lanning Bowl. We'll go Georgia and Oregon. I think that's my prediction for this year.
I love that prediction. That's pretty good. Yeah, and that's solid. I have Georgia in the title game as well. The team they play is going to be interesting. It's always funny to talk about Ryan Day as someone who's on the hot seat, but man, all you hear is Ohio State fans complaining about him. And honestly, if you think about it, they're in the right to complain. Like, he has done the least with the most in his time there. And his offenses always look so, like, underwhelming. Like, really? This is your offense? Like, with all these talented guys? Like, it's always tough to watch.
CJ Stroud's not that door anymore.
Yeah, exactly. He's not going through that door. Exactly. So, and now you see him tearing it up in the NFL. It's like, gosh, Ryan, really? Like, I'm not gonna pick Ohio State. I guess that's the point of all that. So it's just a long way of saying that. But you do have to pick another team from like those two conferences. So
you could pick another SEC team, Dave, because they're gonna get a bunch in. Like it could, the way the bracket shakes out and how the seeding is. I mean, all of that's not really a lot of fun taking 2 SEC teams, but you could.
Well, it's a bigger SEC too, though. I think like the good thing about taking the 2 SEC teams is that they're both always deserving a lot of times, So I think Texas is going to fall back a little bit. I don't think they're going to get that far. So it's between Missouri and LSU. Wow. Do I play this with my head or my heart? I'll take Missouri. I mean, but it's probably going to be LSU. But I think I don't want to root for that. I'm gonna take Missouri. So Missouri versus Georgia for a championship. That'd be kind of. It's a divisional battle for the championship. That's kind of nuts, actually, if you think about it.
Pretty neat, honestly. Like,
yeah.
we have no idea how this is going to play out. Like, this could be a complete disaster. Like, just how this ends up working with like the tiebreakers and all the stuff we talked about last week,
Yeah.
or it could just be so entertaining. Like, it's going to be fascinating. Like, we've never seen anything like this in college football, so it's going to be great.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we talked a little bit ago about. I'm not sure if it was us specifically, but I remember hearing the first round where teams would host their playoff game, and how
Yes.
people want that to be a thing for the future. Like they want other teams to like do that when they expand, and then everybody gets that home field. And I think even the big guns want that. I think they would want it more. Actually.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. That's my whole thing. I think they might expand after this year, so like all the top seeds will get the home game. Whereas now, if you're seeds 1 through 4, you don't get the whole home game. You get a bye, but you go straight to like the next round, which is at bowl games. And I think they're going to want the home game, even if it's a trade off. Like, you have to play a game. Like, okay, if your team's good enough, you should be able to win it. Take that risk and then get the home game. So I think that's what's going to end up happening.
Yeah, that's a great call. And it probably benefits these teams anyway because you don't have the layoff. You've seen teams with the layoff and they look rusty, with like a month off. So at least that's
that'll be interesting too. It'll kind of be like the NFL playoffs where like the number 1 and 2 seeds have that bye, and then they're playing the wild card team that's just played, and the team with the bye is like all rusty. So it'll be interesting to see if these top seeds are rusty in their bowl games versus the teams that won in the first round. It's gonna be fascinating.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I love that this system is here. It's a big step up from what we had before, so I'm very happy about it. And if they expand from that so that everybody's playing on the first weekend, that's fine too. I think that's a good spot, having the home games. And imagine tailgating for a playoff game. Like, just the hype of that's gonna be wild. People are gonna be fired up for these games.
It's gonna be crazy. Like, I think the way we were predicting, I think you can almost guarantee that there's gonna be a game at Notre Dame Stadium this year, which is like, that's like the college football at its finest. Like, Notre Dame's gonna host a playoff game, preferably against like an SEC team. Like, imagine like LSU at Notre Dame in the first round of the playoff, like the Brian Kelly Bowl in the first round of the playoff. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So that is phenomenal. I mean, I think we've just pretty much hit everything on the spot, everything on the nose here. We could get into win totals, but I feel like this is a good place to end. I can throw out a few if you have some win totals. I don't know if you've had win totals on your radar, but I have a couple I could get to. But
I mean, I have a couple. Which ones do you like? And I'll see if I like am in alignment with you.
Okay, so let me just roll through this really quickly. So for me, I think Kansas State over 8.5 feels like or over 9.5 feels like a solid play. It might be a little risky, but I think they're gonna have a good year. I think that's a good one. Memphis over 9.5 seems solid too, because like basically they can lose 2 games and they can still get it. So like I feel like with that schedule they have, they could totally do it. And Ole Miss under 9.5 or 10.5. Like, I'm siding with you. I think I like Ole Miss. I don't know if I like them that much. I think they're gonna have 9 or maybe 8. I don't feel like they're gonna have more than that. I think I do one more. Let me see.
I think I'm with you. You said you had one more.
Yeah, the one more is gonna be Virginia Tech over 8.5, because their schedule is fairly simple.
Okay, yep.
Very easy. Yeah.
Yeah, because their schedule looks pretty easy. I can't disagree with any of those. From a couple of ones that we talked about tonight. So, Wyoming over. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I just wrote down over and under.
Okay, I can
so maybe you fill in. But Wyoming under, Hawaii over, San Diego State under. We didn't mention them. They have a whole new. They're going from Brady Hoke's like archaic offense to this new like fast, high-paced offense with Sean Lewis. So that's going to take some time for them to implement. So they're an under. La Tech under. I think I mentioned them. They might be one of the worst teams in the country. There's a coach that's going to be fired from La Tech. Sonny Cumby. He could be like one of the first coaches fired. They're a dead under, so we'll go with them under. Um, from the ACC, I have a couple. Pitt under, SMU over, um, and then uh, I said Florida under too. Sadly to say, but I think we kind of already talked about that. Um, and then from the Big Ten, Wisconsin under. They have just a brutal schedule, almost similar to Florida's. Maybe a touch easier, but still really difficult. And then UCLA under with Foster, and
Oh my
then
gosh, yeah.
Indiana. Yeah, Indiana
Yeah.
over. Just betting on Signetti. So yeah, those are a bunch that I kind of
Yeah.
have my eye on. I'm going to put a few in before the weekend and
Yeah.
get some games kicked off.
And this is good. Indiana's 5.5. Indiana's over under is 5.5. So that's a great one.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Just gotta get to a bowl game. 6-6,
Yeah.
sign me up.
UCLA over under is 5.5. So under that, that's probably easy. Who are we kidding? Like, that's just gonna be a rough year. Now you mentioned I was trying to find Louisiana Tech. I couldn't find them on the chart. Let me see if I can find them.
I think they're like 4.5. I want to say, or they got to be either 4.5 or 5.5. It's 5.5. That's so easy. 4.5. I'm still good with.
I'm just scrolling over to it. I wonder where they are. What conference are they in? Conference USA, or I'm trying to remember where the hell they are. Okay, so let me go see if I can find that. For some reason they're not showing me Conference USA in here. Oh, there you go. Now I got it. Okay, so Louisiana Tech is going to be. It is 4.5. 4.5. Yeah.
Yeah. They're not going to win 5 games, so under.
New Mexico State's over under. Interestingly enough, it's 4.5. So nobody's high on them this year. Nobody. Yeah.
I would say under for them. Yeah.
I don't blame you. Yeah, that's pretty much on point. So let's see. We got what were the other ones you mentioned? I'm just gonna go roll through these. Let's see.
I mentioned a bunch.
I'm trying to see if I remember some of these. I'll just roll them out for you. Oh, Indiana's over under is 5.5. I love the over there. That's great. Just get to a bowl game. Yeah, like you said. Okay. And then Wisconsin is 6.5, so under 6.5.
Yeah, they're not going to win 7 games.
Yeah.
If you pull up their schedule, it's really difficult.
Yeah, I think that's pretty solid. Oh, let me throw an extra one here for you. USC over 7.5. It's gettable.
That's close. Honestly, I think it might come down to like the very first game of the year. So I don't know if you want to tie up your money all year. Just bet them money line versus LSU. You probably get better value on it that way anyway.
Well, yeah. Well, I think it's like a 6.5 point spread. Did I see that correctly? So it's like, really, it's either one team's going to win by a ton or USC is going to win outright. I don't see them like losing by 5. Like, I feel like it's going to be one or the other there. So I think it's a good idea, and good value too. Kansas over under is 8.5. That's not bad.
I would say under for them, just because, like we were saying before, they lose their home field advantage this year because their stadium renovations. So they're playing games at Arrowhead and then at like the soccer stadium. So they really don't have much of a home field advantage. Plus, Jalen Daniels, as dynamic as he is, he hasn't stayed healthy the last couple of years. And now their backup is in the NFL, or he graduated. I think he's like one of those semi-pro leagues. So, without Jason being there, if Jalen Daniels gets hurt, they're in big trouble. So I would say under on this.
Yep. The SMU over under is 8.5. Would you stay with the over?
That's really tight.
Yeah. That's a tough one, huh?
I mean, their schedule's pretty favorable, but I don't know if I can see them 9-3. Like 8-4 feels like just about right for them. That's a pass for me.
Yeah, that's a tough call. Let's see. I think that's the gist of it. I think there are some other ones, but I don't think we rolled through all of them. I probably would take the over in Notre Dame, even though that means they have to go win 11 games, but they absolutely should. Like who do they play?
10.5.
10.5 at FanDuel. Yeah.
Ooh.
It's a big number. It's a big number. Yeah.
Jeez.
It's a big number.
If it was like 9.5, like yeah, I'm in on the over, but 10.5, that's a big number.
Yeah. Oh, let me give you one more. Because I love this. Now, I don't know where this is gonna end up by the time we get to like to take an action on it. Miami over under 9 or 9.5, depending on where you look. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, come on, like you have to bet
the
under. I mean, how could you not? Like Mario Cristobal, like
just based on history, you have to go under. I mean, he might not take a knee again and blow a game. Like you just don't know.
I mean, absolutely. Like, I'm not gonna say it's an easy bet because it's not. You never know. Maybe they're so talented they end up winning 10, but you definitely love your chances there. So I'm with you on that. Let me throw in two more. Utah over under 9.5, and then Bama same number.
I'd say under on Utah just because I think the Big 12 is so competitive. Like 9-3 seems very reasonable for them.
Yeah.
Bama's tough.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I don't know.
I did pick them for the SEC championship, so I have to say over, I guess, but just slightly, like 10-2 for them.
Yeah, I mean, it seems right. I think it's gonna be right there. Like it's gonna be like 9 or 10. I don't feel like it's gonna be a whole lot different. So I thought there would be maybe 8, but it's 8, 9, or 10. So yeah, you definitely will be right in the mix the whole year. So I couldn't argue with either side of that. Yeah, that's probably gonna do it. So now Jordy's has a question. What fantasy? It's an odd question. It's an interesting question. And what does your fantasy for Pac-12 look like? Well, there is no Pac-12, so I guess I don't know.
What schools would?
Well, no, because like
basically,
what if you could make a fantasy team out of former Pac-12 schools? Maybe that's the idea. I don't know. I don't really do fantasy.
Or maybe like going forward, like what schools should be added, basically.
Maybe. Well, he's asking like if you made a fantasy football team out of players from Pac-12 schools, but there is no Pac-12.
Oh, I see. Oh my goodness.
It's not really something I would do. So I don't really know, to be honest. So I'm sorry to say, but
oh my gosh, that's a good question. I'd have to really dive in. Like, okay, like Aaron Rodgers, Cal. Like, let's start there. I mean,
oh, if you were talking about all time, this is a much easier question if it's all time. Okay, we can totally do that. Like, yeah.
Well, I don't know. Even present, like you could still say Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I guess
that's probably true. I think Aaron Rodgers of today could still beat a lot of Pac-12.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wouldn't choose Jared Goff over him for sure. You know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, Jordy, feel free to clarify that. Is that all time or is that just like for this year? Because like, if we're talking all time, then that becomes a really fun discussion. Because then you could go.
So that's really fun exercise. I have to do some deep diving on that one.
I mean, I give my guy Marcus Allen would be at running back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that would be for sure. Clay Matthews on defense, like that'd be pretty good, you know.
Polamalu, right? That's your guy too.
Oh, strong safety would be great. Yeah. That defense is gonna be amazing. Oh, you did mean all the time. Okay, that's okay. All right, I got you now. Okay. So yeah, no, that's yeah. I think that is a great question. Then that's gonna be open up. Dan Fouts could be the quarterback. You know, there's so many good choices for the quarterback too. Like you mentioned Aaron Rodgers, that's a fantastic choice.
Andrew Luck. I mean, I just remember he went. Stanford is still in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey. I mean, there's so many ways you could go with that.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, every position is going to be stacked. Like it's such a great history. It's just great. It has had so much great history in football. Yeah. And then what do you look at as far as like? Let me see. Running backs. We mentioned running backs. Wide receivers. Okay, so wide receivers. Wow. Juju might make it on the roster. Like solid NFL pro.
Keyshawn Johnson. He went to USC, didn't he?
That's right. Yep. Good. That's a good call.
trying to think of like some of those Washington receivers. I mean, they could have some good pros, all the guys that just got drafted, but I mean they're still pretty young.
Yeah. Yeah, this is you'd have a lot of good choices though, I think. Like it's just tough to kind of come up with anyone specific at the moment because I think some of the biggest ones were in other conferences. Like Jerry Rice went to like Southern
He went
Miss?
to Mississippi Valley State.
Yeah. So it's not even not even an FBS team. So like that's
Yes, FCS. Yep.
yeah. So that's what's interesting about NFL. Like you never know where you're gonna find your talent. Like it's always interesting. It's always fascinating that way. So yeah, thank you for your question, Jordy. Second last question, Jordy says, will Vols QB Nico Iamaleava live up to the hype? That's John. I'll give that to you because I couldn't say. I mean, I feel like you could go either way on that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna say yes. He looks like the real deal. This is just based off of me seeing him play one game against Iowa in that bowl game. He was very impressive. And then also just my limited playing college football 25 on
Mm-hmm.
Xbox. Like he's a beast. So yes, I'm gonna say yes to Nico. Um, Not necessarily Tennessee as a team as a whole, because obviously your team is just more than your quarterback. But I am a fan of Nico. I think he will live up to expectations.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jordy. And honestly, the Vols have had some good fortune at quarterback in recent years, so it's a good spot. I think I like their chances with Nico as well. Certainly, I like him to do well. I don't, like you said, I don't know about the rest of the team. And thanks for your comment. Those are the solid picks for sure. I appreciate you. So with that all lined up, we're ready for the season, John. And yeah, I'm looking forward to looking at these win totals too. I'm curious. Let's see how many of these I fire on, but it'll be a fun one. So yeah, I'll give it to you for final thoughts.
Yeah, no, Davis, again, tons of fun just breaking down all the conferences. I wish we could do more. Like there's some teams we probably didn't even mention, but like there's only so much you can do on two shows. But I'm glad that we got all the picks in and got to talk about all the conferences. And the season's here. We got some games this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a great schedule. I mean, with the one kind of higher profile game with Florida State and Georgia Tech in Ireland, but hey, it's football on the TV that we get to watch, and it's going to be start of just an amazing season. So I just cannot wait to see how this all plays out. And thanks again for having me on to talk about all of it.
You got it, John. Thank you so much for doing this. You put a lot of hard work into doing the prep for these programs, so I appreciate you. Good luck in all your action this season, and we'll see you around pretty soon. Thank you so much, John. Have a good one.
Yep, sounds good, Dave. We'll talk soon. See you.
Bye. John in Connecticut, everybody. That was really great. Like, really good stuff, everybody. If you missed any part of it, of course, you know where to find the replay. You can go over to, you'll see the replay right here on YouTube if you've been watching us live all night. And also, we are on all the podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and wherever you find podcasts, you'll find us, The Sandwich Corner. My name is Dave Medina. You know me as Dave. He's eating his sandwich. I am on all the platforms as well. So TikTok and Instagram, and also on Twitch and YouTube. So as far as Twitch, our next stream, we might do one in a little bit if you're watching us live. And then join us on Monday when we resume Portal 2 gameplay with our good friend, the Rusty Panda, who's also a variety streamer. That'll be fun. Monday night, join us. Time to be determined, but I believe it'll be like 8 o'clock Eastern. So we'll see you then. In the meanwhile, have a good weekend. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we will see you. Oh, that's actually a good question. Jordy says, what's coming up next in the Sandwich Corner? We'll probably keep dabbling with football throughout the season. We're probably not going to do weekly segments like we did in years past, but we'll be bringing people in just to talk about different games, different teams, and what have you. And you might even see some surprises, some crossover guests from Twitch and might join us during the football year. So it's going to be a good time. So stay with us. We'll have a lot of football stuff coming your way on the Sandwich Corner in the weeks to come. So thank you for your continued support, everybody. And we will see you next time.